Rounds seem to follow that pattern, getting off to a bad start and then you were always trying to recover and slip up later on, then kind of sealed your fate. But some very, very good rounds and a personal triumph there for Matt, as I say, coasted past the World Quiz Champion. Been great having you here, Driving Force. Thank you very much. But the Eggheads have done what comes naturally to them and they still reign supreme over Quizland. I'm afraid you won't be going home with the £5,000, which means the money rolls over to the next show. Eggheads, congratulations. Who will beat you? Join us next time to see if a new team of challengers have the brains to defeat the Eggheads. £6,000 says they don't. Until then, goodbye.
Next on ABC, get a snapshot of the day's key stories on Early Edition. Then, hosted by Steve Kinane and Julia Baird, they discuss it all on The Drum. And later, is it trash or treasure? Antiques Roadshow.
The idyllic Greek islands are attracting a new crowd. Boat people arriving in their thousands.
Well, you don't really want them roaming around near your sunbeds.
How does a country in crisis cope with this?
Whoever can pay $1,000 can go to Europe.
Foreign Correspondent, tonight at 8 on ABC.
Tonight on ABC, Foreign Correspondent, Joanna Lumley's Trans-Siberian adventure, and then exploring the wonders of life with Professor Brian Cox.
And on ABC2, Matt Smith stars as Doctor Who. Then Barjo and Hex bring you the latest gaming news and reviews, and later, the checkout.
News: Indonesia will slash its Australian cattle intake by 80%, leaves beef producers reeling. An Australian woman jailed in the UAE over a Facebook post, soon to be deported. The bigger a baby at birth, the more likely it is to develop childhood cancer.
We think the greatest value we'll get from this finding is to be able to find out why it's true.
And Australia is set to receive the first images of the dwarf planet Pluto during tonight's flypast. Hello, James McHale with ABC News Early Edition. The live export industry is reeling at news Indonesia will accept just 1/5 of the Australian cattle it did last quarter. Producers warn the decision will create havoc and cost them millions. For more, we're joined by Sally Brooks, live now from Darwin. Now, Sally, first off, do we know what's prompted this drastic reduction?
James, the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association, along with the Livestock Exporters Council, have today emphasised that this was really a decision made internally by the Indonesian government and not the result of any Australian policies or decisions relating to Indonesia. They said that it's sort of in line with the Indonesian government's strategy of wanting to be self-sufficient in terms of providing and using their own cattle to meet local supply. We heard from Alison Penfold from the Australian Livestock Exporters Council earlier today. This is what she had to say.
It certainly will present some challenges, particularly around shipping for the industry, but we've been trading with Indonesia now for over 30 years. We've had our ups and downs. The reasons for it haven't been made clear to us. One thing, though, is clear, that this is simply a decision related to the trade. It's unrelated to other issues that might be going on in the relationship between Australia and Indonesia.
Now, as we just heard there, the exporters believe this is a trade issue and not related to political issues, but the opposition is not so sure.
Yes, the opposition leader, Bill Shorten, today said that this news was of grave concern. He said that he hoped that Australia and Indonesia's political relationship hadn't influenced this decision in relation to cattle import permits. Indeed, the execution of 2 Australian drug smugglers earlier this year, Andrew Chan and Myron Sukumaran, plus allegations that Australian customs officials paid people smugglers to take asylum seekers back to Indonesia, have certainly given rise to suggestions that perhaps political tensions between the two countries could have in fact led to this decision. But as we heard earlier, the Livestock Exporters Council have dismissed those suggestions.
And what has the Agriculture Minister had to say?
Today, Barnaby Joyce said that he would work hard to find alternative markets for the cattle. He also backed calls from the industry to change the way that permits are allocated. This is what Barnaby Joyce had to say earlier today.
I think the annual quotas would give us more resilience and more predictability. The quarterly quota system brings a form of uncertainty in price in Jakarta and uncertainty in supply from Australia.
So the exporters have today told me that some alternative markets could include either Malaysia or Vietnam, but the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association has said that on such short notice, it will be difficult to transfer some of the cattle destined for Indonesia to other markets. But they really have emphasised that despite this bump in the road today, that Indonesia really does remain a key cattle trading import market. James.
Sally Brooks, thank you. Foreign Minister Julie Bishop says a West Australian woman detained in the United Arab Emirates over a Facebook post is likely to be deported to Australia soon. Jodie Maggi was found guilty a fortnight ago of a cybercrime after she posted a photo on social media in February. She's now waiting to be sent home.
39-year-old Jodie Maggi was taken to court after she posted a photo on Facebook of a car parked across 2 disability spaces in her apartment block in Abu Dhabi. She was found guilty of writing bad words on social media about a person and received a deportation order along with a fine, but was detained when she went to pay it.
I'm putting my life in the hands of chaos. I'm terrified.
The Foreign Minister says she's aware of Ms Maggi's situation.
As a result of paying the fine, she's being deported to Australia. This has happened in the past and she's been detained pending deportation, which I also understand has happened in the past.
She says Australian officials have been assisting Ms Maggi, who claims no help or advice has been offered by the embassy.
I'm expecting her to be deported in a very short time, and Australian consular officials are providing her and her husband whatever support we can.
Ms Maggi has worked as a graphic designer in Perth and Melbourne and now teaches in Abu Dhabi. She told the ABC she was driven around by police for hours after being arrested.
No one's talking to me, no one's telling me what's going on. I've been driving around for literally about 4 hours and they're about to put me in male lockup and then they turn me away and no one knows what to do with me.
West Australian Premier Colin Barnett said any help from Australia would be provided through the consulate.
It's an unusual, almost bizarre case, but I'm sure she will be looked after by the Australian authorities there and hopefully released very quickly.
The ABC understands Ms Maggi's family in Perth are worried about her, but haven't had regular contact since she moved to the UAE in 2012. Emily Peace, ABC News.
The Immigration Department is refusing to say if national security concerns are the reason several Russian space agency workers were unable to get visas to attend a satellite conference in Queensland. The Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, has rejected accusations from the Russian embassy that the move was an unfriendly step. Here's the ABC's national security reporter, Andrew Green.
This morning on the Gold Coast, hundreds of delegates have gathered for a symposium looking at the very latest in satellite navigation technology. Now, the 3-day event has drawn people from around the world, but some members of Russia's space agency who were invited were not able to secure visas to Australia. The organisers of the event aren't keen to discuss the matter, but the Russian embassy here in Canberra says it's not sure if national security concerns are the reason that some of its citizens haven't been able to secure Australian visas. In any case, a spokesman has told the ABC Russia is very disappointed at Australia's actions.
Obviously, every country can decide who to let a visa, but in the current circumstances, given it is an international, as I understand, the United Nations conference, it is not a very friendly step from Australia as a host country to do so.
Well, I reject that. Australia has a universal visa system. It takes time to process a visa and do all of the appropriate checks. Those visas that were presented to us have been processed. As I said, a number of Russian citizens are in Australia participating in the conference. It came down to an administrative processing matter and the timing of it. And anybody who's applied for a visa in countries which require a visa would know that you have to do it in a timely way.
There has been a statement given to the ABC by the Immigration Department in which it says all persons wishing to visit or migrate to Australia must first satisfy mandatory checks which may include health, character and national security. And it's also reminded visa applicants they must submit their paperwork at least 4 weeks in advance. Now, the department has also confirmed that 4 Russian applicants were granted visas to attend the International Satellite Conference, but it won't say how many Russians were knocked back or the reasons for that decision.
4 people have been arrested in Sydney after a brawl at a children's birthday party last month. The brawl in front of horrified children at the Wetherill Park Play Centre was captured on CCTV and left 3 men in hospital. Police say the fight began when one father tried to speak to another man over an incident between their children. He was assaulted by a group of men, as were his 2 friends who came to his aid. Search warrants were executed at several properties across southwestern Sydney this morning. 3 men were arrested, aged 35, 38 and 61, along with a 31-year-old woman. Police say after reviewing footage of the incident and being concerned for the children present, they hope the arrests send a strong anti-violence message to the community. The second day of Australia's first Royal Commission into Family Violence has heard children can be adversely affected before they are even born. Here's reporter Danny Morgan with more.
We heard from 2 experts this morning that said that the impact of family violence on children can be felt in the womb. The sort of hormones generated when a pregnant woman is abused can pass through the placenta, we're told, and through to the child. And that can have a detrimental effect on the child's development. There's premature births and possibly delays in growth of the brain and the nervous system. We also heard about the more longer-term impacts on children who experience family violence in their early years. They're likely to have problems developing relationships later in life. They have troubles at school often, where they're more likely to be bullied or themselves to become bullies. And there's a pattern, we were told, of the child imitating the behaviour of the violent parent in a relationship. Some people find it hard to believe that the women just don't simply leave, but we were told today it's certainly a very complex time for women. And one of the main reasons is because sometimes it's very dangerous to leave. It's one of the most dangerous times when women are trying to leave, and that we were told that they need a very good plan and very good support because being the most dangerous time, a proportion of the homicides that arise in these cases happen in that stage after women leave.
Australia and other countries investigating the downing of flight MH17 are calling for a criminal tribunal into the incident. The countries, including Belgium, Malaysia, the Netherlands and Ukraine, have asked the UN Security Council to establish the tribunal to try those responsible. Australia's Foreign Minister Julie Bishop says it would be the best way of ensuring justice for the 298 victims and their families. A national memorial service marking the first anniversary of the downing of flight MH17 will be held in Canberra on Friday. The United States has stepped up air operations against the Islamic State group in Iraq and Syria, with 39 airstrikes in the region over the past day. The raids were mostly targeted in and around Ramadi, the provincial capital of the IS stronghold Anbar, which was captured by the jihadists in mid-May. The strikes preceded the launch of a fresh ground offensive by Iraqi troops and Shiite militias to retake Anbar. The first batch of F-16 fighter jets has flown into Iraq, providing much-needed boost to morale. Iraq has ordered 36 of the fighters to help strengthen its air force. Negotiations to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions have missed yet another deadline, but diplomats insist progress is being made. The meeting between 6 major world powers and Iran in Vienna ran into the early hours of the morning. There are reports a draft deal has been reached and an agreement is in sight. One of the partners at the table, the United States, says patience is paramount.
There continue to be significant issues that remain, and the president will not sign on to an agreement. And this is the attitude that's taken by our P5+1 partners too. They're not going to sign on to an agreement until all of our concerns have been addressed.
The partners want to secure access to all of Iran's suspect sites, including military ones. In exchange, they will lift economic sanctions on Tehran. The City of New York has reached a multi-million-dollar settlement with the family of a man who died after being put in a chokehold by police. Eric Garner was accused of illegally selling cigarettes on a street in Staten Island when police confronted him. When he became agitated, an officer put him in a chokehold and pinned him to the ground, despite him complaining that he couldn't breathe. He died in hospital a short time later. Police department policy prohibits the use of chokeholds. The city has agreed to pay his family nearly $6 million in compensation, but continues to deny liability. Mr. Garner's death sparked protests around the country by people outraged over police treatment of African Americans. He calls himself 50 Cent, but the successful American rapper might soon not even be worth that. Also known as Curtis Jackson III, the singer has filed for bankruptcy after being ordered to pay $5 million in damages for invasion of privacy. He'd been accused of acquiring a video made by a woman and her boyfriend, adding a crude commentary, and then posting it online without her permission. 50 Cent lists his assets and liabilities as between $10 and $50 million. Groundbreaking research has found the heavier a baby is at birth, the more likely it is to develop childhood cancer. Researchers say the findings give them important new insights into what might cause tumours in kids. Medical reporter Sophie Scott has this exclusive story.
Like many babies born these days, 3-week-old Frankie is on the larger side.
When Frankie was born, her head was in the 95th percentile, but I knew that I was having a bigger baby. I had 2 growth scans, mid-30 weeks and 36 weeks, and so I was prepared.
But new research has found the bigger the baby, the higher the risk of cancer during childhood.
We think the greatest value we'll get from this finding is to be able to find out why it's true. We know so little about the causes of childhood cancer.
Researchers from the George Institute looked at babies and cancer incidence in 380,000 births from studies going back more than 50 years. After adjusting for gestational age and sex, for every kilogram increase in birth weight, there was an increased risk of 26% for all cancers.
Our next step is to start looking at things like the genetics and also looking at hormonal factors that we know actually increase sizes of babies.
In Australia, women tend to be older and often heavier when giving birth, and babies tend to be bigger. But on that front, the research is reassuring.
In this study, we've found that they're not particularly related to the mother's own weight or how much weight the mother puts on during pregnancy.
They told me that I had to watch eating too many carbs and sweet things when I was pregnant, and they just said that I was going to have a bigger baby because some of my first daughter was so big.
At just under 4 kilos, Frankie's in perfect health and adjusting to the new world around her. Sophie Scott, ABC News.
Prince William has opened up about his new life working as an air ambulance helicopter pilot. It's the first time in recent history an immediate heir to the throne has taken up an outside job that isn't military related. The Prince says he'll have to work it into his royal duties.
At the moment I'm juggling the 2 of them and a young family, and I'm enjoying it and I like the challenge. But yes, inevitably down the line things will probably become a little bit more difficult for me to do that.
The second in line to the British throne says he's embraced his chosen job in the air to keep him grounded. The Duke of Cambridge will also be known as William Wales and will donate his salary to charity. Special Forces soldiers from Australia, New Zealand and the United States have been training in the dark at Darwin's Hidden Valley as part of Operation Talisman Sabre. Australian and American Black Hawks swooped into a mock enemy stronghold under the cover of darkness. 150 Special Forces soldiers poured out of the helicopters to attack mock targets and opposing soldiers with blank rounds.
It's a unique opportunity to bring everyone together to train in a setting which allows us to utilise a number of assets from coalition partners, all under one exercise timeline.
Defence says it's not often that soldiers from 6 different Special Forces units come together to train. Astronomers are about to get the best view of the dwarf planet Pluto that has ever been possible, and it's all because of a piano-sized spacecraft called New Horizons. After a journey of 9.5 years and more than 5 billion kilometres, the spacecraft will be close enough to send back detailed photographs of the tiny planet. The mission was launched in 2006, and scientists say the craft could keep sending back pictures from the edge of the solar system for another 30 years. The Canberra Deep Space Communication Complex at Tidbinbilla in the ACT's west will be the first place on Earth to receive those first close encounter images of Pluto captured and sent from space.
The New Horizons spacecraft will be making its closest approach to Pluto, just 12,500 kilometres above the surface of the planet. We'll be tracking it right up to about the last hour before that encounter. And then we're out of contact with the spacecraft for about 14 hours while it's busy doing its science, studying the planet, turning its cameras to image those moons, to learn more about the surface of these worlds, to learn more about the atmosphere. And then we'll have that hold your breath moment, that 14 hours waiting for that signal to come back again, the phone home, to tell us that it survived this close encounter.
ABC News Online will also be tracking the pictures sent back by New Horizons. The partial resolution to Greece's debt problems has helped the share market record one of its biggest one-day gains for the year, both indices up by 1.9%. Looking across the region, Japan's Nikkei has added 296 points. In commodity trade, the spot gold price is $1,154 an ounce, and the Aussie dollar has held its ground throughout the trade. It's now worth 74.26 US cents. Sport, and Essendon coach James Hird has been released from hospital after crashing his bicycle last night. Hird suffered severe concussion and is now in doubt to lead the Bombers on Friday night.
James Hird is no stranger to helmets, in both his playing days and later as a coach. And it's a good thing he was wearing one last night when he crashed his bike riding home in wet conditions.
There's no fractures, which is fantastic, and by the time he left last night he was able to talk dopey, very dopey, and obviously very sore.
Hird has endured another tumultuous season but seemed poised for a rare week of respite after Saturday's win over Melbourne. He appeared in good spirits this morning, but the club will wait until tomorrow to decide whether he'll be fit to coach on Friday. Decisions about his riding future appear to have already been made.
I think we won't do any wet weather riding anymore. He can take the car, I think.
He loves his fitness regime though, Hirdy, so I think he's all right. He's probably going to have to go and get his licence now for riding a bike. Is there Els?
While Essendon had some fun at the coach's expense, Magpie boss Nathan Buckley wants his players to show more affection. Buckley was disappointed Travis Barco didn't get any love from teammates after this effort to set up Jamie Elliott last Thursday.
Public displays of affection, I like to term it, to show the love for each other for the little things that might not be sexy outside of our four walls.
The Magpies will need more than love to snap a 3-game losing streak when they face the Eagles on Saturday. Damien McIver, ABC News.
Melbourne captain Cameron Smith has maintained his silence about his rift with Alex McKinnon ahead of his 300th NRL match with Storm. McKinnon wasn't happy with Smith's behaviour in the moments after he broke his neck in a tackle that's left him confined to a wheelchair. But Smith says he wants to keep the matter private.
Cameron Smith will become the first player at the Storm to play 300 games with the club. But instead of celebrating the milestone, he's still defending his actions in the wake of a tackle that left Alex McKinnon with a devastating spinal injury.
I don't really want to discuss that here today. I think today's more about celebrating my 300.
But if he doesn't duck his head, that doesn't happen.
McKinnon was disappointed Smith repeatedly questioned the resulting penalty and that he's failed to contact him since the accident. The pair are expected to meet to clear the air, but the Storm captain wouldn't be drawn on whether the two have already spoken.
Unfortunately, this is a private matter, so I'll deal with it that way.
It's been a testing 10 days for Smith, but he's received support from both his club and key people within the game.
He wants to settle things privately now and keep it private, and as far as I'm concerned, that's the best way for him to handle it, and that's the way we'll support him.
Smith made his debut for the Storm back in 2002. He'll join an elite group of 23 players when Melbourne hosts the Panthers on Friday night.
I'm not the biggest bloke getting around or the fastest, I always get told I look like an accountant.
I don't think there's been too many better players than Cameron Smith.
Smith believes helping build the Storm's legacy in the AFL's heartland is one of his greatest achievements. Jennifer Browning, ABC News.
Despite a late call-up, Australian cricketer Pat Cummins says he's physically and emotionally ready to play a part in this year's Ashes. He's already in the selection frame, with Mitchell Starc nursing an ankle injury from Australia's first Test loss to England. Cummins says he's happy with his fitness after flying in last week to replace the retiring Ryan Harris.
Couldn't be happy with where I am, so I'm, really ready for a game, and if it was a Test match, I'd certainly be quite nervous, but I hope that I'm ready.
Cummins has only played one Test, and that was almost 4 years ago. He took 7 wickets in South Africa, but has battled a number of injuries since. Spanish football powerhouse Real Madrid has begun preparations ahead of the International Champions Cup, which kicks off in Melbourne on Saturday. Ben Lisson has more from the MCG.
Well, there's a very strong media presence here in Melbourne as Real Madrid has taken to the training paddock for their first time ahead of the International Champions Cup. It's a 3-team pre-season tournament that's going to feature 3 of the biggest clubs from Europe. Of course, the Spanish Giants behind me, and also AS Roma and Manchester City. And the first game will kick off at the MCG on Saturday night between Real Madrid and AS Roma as well. For the club's first trip to Australia, they are bringing some big stars. Cristiano Ronaldo, Gareth Bale and Sergio Ramos are among the contingent here for the club. And they've also got a new boss in Rafael Benitez, who'll be looking to take a look at his squad, I guess, before their Spanish title charge later in the year. 200,000 tickets have been sold for the tournament so far, so while it is just a pre-season tournament, it's sure to be a popular one.
Time now to check in with Steve Kinane from The Drum. Now, Steve, Indonesia has cut live Australian cattle imports by 80%, leaving some producers well and truly in the lurch.
Yeah, and James, this came as a real shock to many people today. Of course, last quarter there was 250,000 head of cattle going over to Indonesia. Next quarter, only 50,000 due to head over. The opposition is blaming this on the fractured relationship with Indonesia, but the government and industry say that's not the case. So we'll be trying to get to the bottom of that one this afternoon on The Drum.
Plus, overseas anger on the streets of Athens after the third bailout deal is offered to Greece.
And James, you can understand why they're angry, because the government was holding out for a deal previously that was actually, better than the one that they've struck this time round. We know that the former finance minister has described this deal as being like the Treaty of Versailles, and we all know what that led to. So will this lead to the rise of further extremism in Greece? We'll also be discussing that one on The Drum tonight.
That's after this bulletin. Thanks very much, Steve Kinane. Now for a look at the national weather with Graham Creed.
Another cold front's moving up through the southeast, and it should move through to the tablelands of New South Wales by this time tomorrow. We're expecting to see widespread showers, possible hail in behind it, and snow to low levels, potentially down to about 500 metres through western parts of Victoria. Elsewhere, it'll be relatively clear. That includes most of Tasmania. There's only a very slight chance of an isolated shower about the far northeastern coast and the far southwest corner of Queensland. Frosty morning to begin with, potentially some frost up about the Atherton tablelands again. For New South Wales, showers and possible thunderstorms developing through most of the inland, also through the coast, generally south of around Wollongong. We should see snow down to around 1,000 metres. Also looking at snow to about 800 metres across Victoria. Fairly widespread showers, some frost in the morning though, and potential snow down to about 500 metres in the morning through the western ranges. For Tasmania, it should be a generally dry day. There's potential of an isolated shower about the South Hobart itself should remain mostly dry. We're expecting widespread frost. Also the potential of a bit of frost about and fog through eastern parts of South Australia. Showers about the agricultural districts, but they're all expected to be relatively light and patchy. Mostly dry through Western Australia. Any showers in the south and around the Gascoyne will clear as the morning progresses. Only